I am sitting in my small apartment in Portland, Oregon. The morning light filters through the window, casting a warm glow across my coffee table. It has been exactly 1 year since I left everything behind in Phoenix, Arizona without saying a single word to my wife. 3.5 years. That is how long I believed I was living in a perfect marriage, until I discovered something that shattered my heart completely. And when she finally tracked me down after 12 months, the demand she made left me absolutely speechless. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and stick with me through this story. Because what my wife demanded when she finally found me will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about love and betrayal. I still remember the exact moment I first saw Natalie. I was 28 years old, working as a software engineer at a tech company in Phoenix. A colleague invited me to a corporate party hosted by a partnering firm, and I almost did not go. But something told me to put on a decent shirt and show up that Friday evening. She was standing near the bar wearing a navy blue dress that complemented her dark brown hair perfectly. When she laughed at something her friend said, her whole face lit up in a way that made everyone around her seem dull in comparison. I found myself walking toward her before I even realized what I was doing. We talked for 3 hours straight that night. Natalie worked as a marketing manager at an advertising agency downtown. She was smart, witty, and had this incredible ability to make me feel like the most interesting person in the room. By the end of the evening, we had exchanged phone numbers and made plans to meet for coffee the following weekend. Our relationship moved quickly, but it never felt rushed. Every moment with her felt natural, like we had known each other for years instead of months. 6 months after that first meeting, I took her back to the same restaurant where we had our first official date. I got down on one knee right there between the appetizers and the main course. She said yes before I even finished asking the question. The wedding was small and intimate, exactly what we both wanted. Just close family and a handful of friends gathered in a beautiful garden venue outside the city. I remember looking at Natalie as she walked down the aisle, thinking I was the luckiest man alive. Her father shook my hand with tears in his eyes, telling me to take good care of his daughter. I promised him I would. We saved up for 2 years before we could afford our first home together. It was a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb of Phoenix with a small backyard and a 2-car garage. I had been putting away money since I graduated college, so I ended up covering about 80% of the down payment and mortgage. Natalie contributed what she could, and we made it work. That house represented everything we were building together, a foundation for the family we hoped to have someday. The first 2 years of marriage were everything I dreamed they would be. We cooked dinner together almost every night, alternating between my attempts at Italian cuisine and her surprisingly good Thai recipes. Weekends meant lazy mornings in bed, followed by hikes or movie marathons, depending on the weather. We talked about having children, maybe 2 or 3, and how we would convert the spare bedroom into a nursery when the time came. I worked hard to provide for us. Sometimes that meant staying late at the office or bringing my laptop home to finish projects. But Natalie always seemed understanding. She would bring me coffee while I worked and kiss my forehead before going to bed without me. I thought we were partners in every sense of the word. When Natalie got promoted to senior marketing manager in our 3rd year of marriage, I could not have been prouder. The position came with more responsibility and more travel, but I supported her completely. Her career mattered to me just as much as my own. When she told me she had to attend conferences in other cities on weekends, I simply wished her luck and asked her to text me when she landed safely. But somewhere around month 30 of our marriage, things started to shift in ways I could not quite identify at first. Small things that seemed insignificant on their own, but added up to something unsettling when I looked back at them later. Natalie began keeping her phone face down on the table during dinner. She used to leave it sitting openly between us, occasionally showing me funny memes or work emails that made her laugh. Now she would snatch it up quickly whenever it buzzed, taking it into another room to respond. Her weekend business trips became more frequent. What used to be once every couple of months turned into twice a month, then nearly every other weekend. She always came back tired, barely wanting to talk about how the conference went. When I asked questions, she gave vague answers about networking events and panel discussions that all seemed to blur together. One evening, I came home early to surprise her with flowers for our anniversary. But the house was empty, even though she had told me she would be working from home that day. When she finally arrived 3 hours later, she said she had gone out for a quick lunch with a colleague. The flowers sat in their vase on the table, a silent witness to my growing confusion. I tried to push these thoughts aside. Natalie was my wife, my partner, my best friend. I trusted her with my entire heart. When doubt crept in, I reminded myself of all the good times we shared, all the promises we made to each other. Surely I was just being paranoid. Surely there was a reasonable explanation for everything. Then one afternoon I called her office to ask about her upcoming travel schedule. I wanted to plan a surprise getaway for the weekend she was supposed to be free. Her assistant answered and told me something that made my stomach drop. Natalie had not had any work-related travel scheduled for the past 3 months. All her recent trips had been personal time off. I hung up the phone and sat in silence for what felt like hours. There had to be an explanation. Maybe her assistant was new and did not have access to the full calendar. Maybe there was some miscommunication about how travel was classified. I decided to wait and see, hoping desperately that my fears were unfounded. But deep down, a part of me already knew that something was terribly wrong. 3 weeks after that phone call, Natalie left for another weekend conference. She kissed me goodbye on Friday morning, her suitcase rolling behind her as she headed to the car. I watched her drive away, then went back inside to start my day. But I could not focus on anything. The doubt had grown into something I could no longer ignore. That night I lay awake until well past 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling and listening to the silence of our empty house. Around 3 a.m., I remembered something. Natalie had an old iPad that she rarely used anymore. It sat in the drawer of her nightstand, forgotten since she upgraded to a newer model last year. But I knew it was still connected to her Apple account, still syncing her messages automatically. My hands trembled as I opened the drawer and pulled out the device. Part of me screamed that this was a violation of her privacy, that I should trust my wife and put the iPad back where I found it. But another part of me needed to know the truth, whatever that truth might be. I typed in the passcode she had used for years, her mother's birthday, followed by the year we got married. The screen unlocked, and I navigated to the Messages app with a pounding heart. What I found there destroyed me. Hundreds of messages between Natalie and someone named Derek. At first, I scrolled quickly, hoping to find innocent work discussions or friendly banter. But the words that filled my screen were anything but innocent. Baby, I cannot stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? I wish I could wake up next to you every morning. Soon, I promise. We just need to be patient. Derek sent photos. Natalie sent photos back. There were heart emojis and inside jokes and plans for future meetings at hotels I had never heard of. The messages went back 18 months, almost half of our entire marriage. I read through them methodically, each one cutting deeper than the last. Derek was a colleague at her company, someone she had mentioned casually a few times as just another person in the office. They had been seeing each other for a year and a half, meeting up during her fake business trips and sometimes even during her supposed lunch breaks. But the message that shattered me completely was one Natalie sent just 3 days before. Derek had asked when she was going to leave me. Her response burned itself into my memory. You know I cannot just walk away from him right now. Morris provides stability. The house is in both our names. I need to be smart about this. Once I figure out the financials, I will be all yours. I only stay with him because it is convenient. I sat on the edge of our bed, the iPad growing cold in my hands, and I could not move, could not think, could not breathe. The woman I loved, the woman I had built my entire life around, saw me as nothing more than a convenience, a financial safety net, a stepping stone to something better. I do not know how long I sat there in the darkness, maybe 2 hours, maybe 3. The sun was starting to rise when I finally picked up my phone and called my brother Greg in California. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice thick with sleep. When I told him what I had discovered, he went completely silent. Then he started asking questions, suggesting I confront Natalie, demanding to know what I was going to do. But I had already made my decision. I was not going to confront her. I was not going to give her the chance to cry and apologize and manipulate me into forgiving her. I had watched her charm her way out of difficult situations before turning tears into weapons and excuses into reasonable explanations. I knew that if I faced her directly, there was a chance I might waver, a chance I might believe whatever story she constructed. No, I was going to disappear. I was going to ghost my own wife and let her wonder why. For the next 3 days, while Natalie was still away with Derek, I put my plan into motion. I contacted my manager and explained that I needed to relocate for personal reasons. Fortunately, my position allowed for remote work and he agreed to let me transition to a fully virtual role. I transferred my portion of our shared savings to a personal account she did not know about. I only took what was rightfully mine, the money I had earned and saved before and during our marriage. I left her share untouched. I packed carefully, selecting only the things that truly belonged to me. My clothes, my books, the laptop I used for work, photographs of my family. I left behind anything we had bought together, anything that might carry her memory. On the last night before Natalie was scheduled to return, I stood in our kitchen and looked around at the life we had built. Then I took off my wedding ring and placed it in the center of the table. No note, no explanation. Just the ring sitting there like a period at the end of a sentence. The next morning I drove north toward Portland, without looking back. Marcus picked me up at a gas station about 30 miles outside the city. He had been my best friend since college, one of the few people who knew me better than I knew myself. When I called him from the road and told him I needed a place to crash for a while, he did not ask questions. He just gave me an address and said he would be waiting. Those first few weeks in Portland were the hardest of my life. I rented a small studio apartment in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where nobody knew my name or my story. At night, I would lie awake staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, replaying every moment of my marriage and wondering how I had been so blind. The nightmares came regularly. I would dream of Natalie laughing with Derek, dream of them living in our house together, sleeping in our bed.